Is Resident Evil 2 worth picking up for the first time in 2026? Hey everyone, this is Kira L from Radio Boys Gaming. I just wrapped up my first playthrough of Resident Evil 2 and I wanted to share my thoughts about the game, what I thought of it, and why I think it's worth picking up if you've never played it, or if you've played it before, why you might want to go back and play it again. This review is completely my opinion. It's totally up to you guys to decide if you trust what I have to say. But as we go through, we're going to look at things like the gameplay, audio, the visuals, those things that make a game worth playing. And just kind of break down each one and kind of why I thought this is a game that is good. Starting with the gameplay, it's a 30-year-old game. It's going to have some issues. But when it comes to controls, it wasn't that bad. The buttons made sense. They did what you would expect a button to do. There was no weird hand yoga poses you needed to pull off in order to do certain things. The only problem with the controls is that the movement uses tank controls, which, if you're not familiar with that, tank controls are basically you use the right and left arrows to rotate the character model, and then forward and backward moves the character forward or backward. And it just doesn't work well by today's standards. They're really, really wonky. I almost died to the final boss because instead of turning around and running away, my character sprinted forward into the boss. So, not a fan of tank controls. Other than that, the controls were good. Some of the other gameplay stuff is, what's the flow of the game, right? What do I do for the game? How do I play the game? And like you would expect in a survival horror, the whole point is objective survive, right? And to do that, you do a lot of exploring. That's kind of one of the main things you do. You go into new areas, looking around for heals, for ammo, or for items that can be useful for solving puzzles and surviving. While you're exploring, you have the option to fight things. You don't have to shoot things if you don't want to. And honestly, there are some pretty good reasons to not fight enemies when you see them, simply because you only have so much ammo, right? I almost didn't have enough firepower to fight the final boss because I'm kind of trigger happy. And the goal of exploring is to find how to progress. And typically, progressions through solving puzzles, whether that's I need items A and B to put into a slot to open up a wall type of puzzle, or it's a puzzle that gives you something that gives you an edge against the boss. You explore to find puzzles as well. Those puzzles are what progress the game. And the puzzles in this one are a lot less in your face that they're puzzles. Resident Evil 1s were pretty clear. These are puzzles you're trying to solve. Some of them were like that in Resident Evil 2, but they felt more, I don't know if organic's the right word, but you find a weapon that you can use specifically against an enemy type that then opens up your way forward, instead of just, oh, I moved a statue from point A to point B and now I can go forward. So that was really fun. I liked how they worked other mechanics into the puzzles in this game. And that's the flow. You explore to find new items, fighting enemies, trying to get out of the police station in Raccoon City. Something that's always been a big deal for games is how replayable they are, right? You don't want to drop money on a game and then you can't really ever play it again because there's no point. But Resident Evil does a really good job of having replayability On the one hand, because of the rankings, you get a rank for how well you performed in your playthrough. The faster you do it, the less saves, less heals you use, the better the rank. So there's something there for you if you're a person who likes to optimize things. On top of the rankings, you have unlockables as well. You get special items for how you perform. And something that's different in Resident Evil 2 versus the first one, you still have the two main characters, but they have two different campaigns. They're called Side A and Side B in the game, and the Side A's are a little bit lighter on the story side and kind of just immerse you in the world of Resident Evil 2. And then you play through the B sides, which unlock when you beat the other character's A side. So you beat Claire A side, you unlock Leon B side, and vice versa. And the B sides introduce a new enemy mechanic, and they change some of the cutscenes, they add more story to the game. So there's replayability just right there to get a full experience of the game. Add in difficulties, which keep the game fresh by giving you less items. Some items are in different places. How you have to play the game is just different. And there's a lot of replayability with these games. And that difficulty isn't just the setting. How you play these games affects how difficult they are. If you're trigger happy like me, again, I almost didn't have enough ammo to fight the final boss. If I had been as trigger happy as I wanted to be in those last moments, I wouldn't have. So that just affects your gameplay. If you're good at dodging enemies and not having to deal with that, you'll have plenty of ammo and plenty of heals on any difficulty. But the worse you are at the basic mechanics of the game, the more difficult each difficulty gets. And a quick side note, my buddy who loves these games, has played through them a bunch, is very adamant that the opening to Resident Evil 2 is really difficult. I died in 10 minutes on normal difficulty, and I almost died on easy. So if you do pick this up and you're struggling with that first 10-15 minutes of the opening game, it's okay. A lot of people struggle with that. So when it comes to the gameplay, the only knock I have against Resident Evil 2 is the tank controls. They're janky. They were really frustrating for me. So I'm going to give the gameplay a 9 out of 10, simply because I couldn't get good. If you're good with tank controls or that doesn't bother you, you like that challenge, awesome. It's probably a 10 out of 10 for gameplay for you then. The sounds in the game, it's audio tracks, it's sound effects, all those, spot on. It nails the audio. The background music did a great job of keeping me immersed in what's going on, keeping me on edge. And there were times where I got a little spooked because of the change in music. I got scared just from that. The background music is present enough to keep you kind of scared, but not so overwhelming that it burns you out. Then you add into the mix the background sounds, the sound effects, the creakings, the doors openings, the gunshots, the zombie moans. All those things blend together to make a pretty amazing auditory experience. I think that's true even by today's standards. The only issue with Resident Evil 2 is that its voice acting is pretty bad when compared to today. It's better than the original, but it's still pretty bad. I laughed at how nonchalant Leon was in the opening.
What's up with that guy? That was a clean hit.
Just in a completely not mood matching way. It was like he was at the gun range and he wondered why his hit didn't register instead of, oh, there's zombies pouring in on top of me. Why didn't that guy go down? And if voice acting is a big thing for you, then this might be a deterrent, or this might knock a point or two off for you. For me, I don't have an issue with the bad voice acting because it's funny. It's part of the game. It's part of the history of the game, you know? So I'm not going to take anything off for the voice acting. So for me, audio is a 10 out of 10. But if you want good voice acting, it's probably a little lower. I have a difficult time on how to judge the visuals. On the one hand, I think they still look pretty good, all things considered. Playing some other games that came out around the same time, Resident Evil 2's graphics hold up a lot better than some of those other games. But they're also late 90s graphics. They're not good by today's standards. It's still pretty playable today. The 3D models are done well enough that they don't look terrible. They look like 90s retro graphics, which for most people probably isn't a big deal. There's a lot of games that come out today that emulate that style. The 2D backdrops, the static backgrounds work really well. They keep a solid visual, and the play between the 3D models and those 2D backdrops work really well, keeping the game looking good enough to be able to be played today. They do a really good job with the colors. The colors for the RPD are not very inviting. As you go through, you look at the colors, you look at the backdrop, you can see in some places just how bad things got when the zombies started to flood in. There are a lot of areas there that you just do not want to be in. The cutscenes are rough to talk about because some of them are really good. The first time you meet a licker looks amazing. Some of the other cutscenes, not so much. The visuals for the time, I think they nailed it. I think it probably looked amazing in 1998. But as I think about how to kind of rate these, a lot of people care about visuals. So yes, if you like retro games, then this is probably going to be a 10 out of 10 for you. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10 for that reason. If you really struggle with pixely graphics, if you're not a fan of retro, the visuals are going to be pretty low for you. I can't even tell you what I think they would be. But it's something to think about. It's also easy to get used to graphics when you're playing through a game. So I don't think you should let the visuals keep you from playing this. Especially because the story is actually really good, especially compared to the first Resident Evil. The first game was pretty bare bones. It was just kind of setting the foundation for the lore that would be coming our way. In Resident Evil 2, it comes out swinging with what's going on. You have the two main characters. You have Leon, the rookie police officer, first day of the job, ready to go. And Claire, a young woman who's looking for her brother, who works at the police station, and she hasn't heard from him in a while. Off the bat, these two characters have more depth to them than the main characters from the first game. And I might catch some flack for that, but let's be real. The first game, all we really know about Chris and Jill are they're members of the RPD's SWAT team, basically. We don't learn a whole lot about them other than that. So you have two main characters that have story with them that's not just, I'm here to do a job and things went sideways. Leon's is a little bit more like that. The side characters do a really good job of helping to flesh out the main characters. Leon and Ada, Sherry and Claire. It makes these characters more approachable. And then you have the unraveling of how unhinged Umbrella is. You get a taste of that in the first game, but here you see they were beloved by Raccoon City. They brought jobs, they supported the town. People really liked this corporation. And then Umbrella secretly abused that trust to further their own motives. They turned the town into basically a huge experiment. The collectible memos, the journals, they detail so much information about that. And not just in this is what Umbrella did. You hear stories of seeing people slowly get sicker and sicker. You have allusions to the itchy, tasty memo from the first game, which if you don't know what that is, it's pretty wild. That's something that Resident Evil has done really well, is developing the lore and the stories through the collectibles that you find. And that's something that makes survival horror games a lot of fun. In the midst of trying to survive, you feel like you're finding these journals and these diaries that help you understand why you're in this situation. And that just really helps to make the game feel good. The story, I think, was the biggest improvement over the first game. I think the story is totally worth playing the game for. After my playthrough of Resident Evil 2, I want to go back and play through as Claire. I want to already kind of check out Code Veronica. I have a feeling I'll like Claire's playthrough. I kind of want to see what happens to her there. And I was already planning on playing Resident Evil 4. Now I'm super excited to play 4 because of Leon. I just didn't feel that way about Jill or Chris after playing through Resident Evil 1. Resident Evil 2 was a big step forward from a storytelling perspective. For me, story gets a 10 out of 10. Now, there are two things that are worth mentioning here. They don't get a score, but in your considerations for playing this game, where the impact that Resident Evil 2 has had on the survival horror genre is worth mentioning. It's the sequel to the game that coined the term survival horror. If you're a survival horror fan and you haven't touched Resident Evil, you should really play it. And if you're not a fan of survival horror, like me, and you get scared pretty easily, like me, these are good games to dip your toe into the genre because, yeah, there's tensions, there's scares, but it's never overwhelming. There's enough time in between the big scares to kind of get back into enjoying the gameplay loop. And even the big scares just help you appreciate surviving better. This game has had a big impact on the genre. It improved on the formula. It added the stalking enemy vibe with Mr. X on the B-sides. And that eventually becomes there's an AI enemy stalking you through the whole game mechanic that we see in a lot more modern survival horrors. It kind of introduced the concept of that mechanic. If you're interested in how it's impacted the survival horror genre, it's worth checking out. And then something that might give you some pause in whether or not to play this. the accessibility of it isn't very great. There's no colorblind mode, no subtitles. The only accessibility feature it really has is that you can fully remap your controller, which isn't nothing, but for people that need some of those other accessibility features, Resident Evil 2 is probably going to be a little bit harder of a game for you to play. Something to keep in mind. So Resident Evil gets a solid 39 out of 40. I don't think that there's really anywhere else to take some points off. It might get a little bit lower depending on how you feel about some of those other aspects. I'm a pretty easy person to please. So give it a try. See what you think. I'd be interested to know what you would rank Resident Evil 2. It's a great experience. I don't think you'll regret it. Give it a try. Thanks for tuning in. Peace out.